Imperfect Heroes Podcast is a production of Little Hearts Academy, USA.
You're listening to Imperfect Heroes, Insights into Parenting, the perfect podcast for imperfect parents looking to find joy in their experience of raising children in an imperfect world. And I'm your host, DJ Stutz. Hey everyone, and thanks so much for joining us and deciding to spend the next few minutes here at Imperfect Heroes. Today we are talking just probably one of my favorite subjects. We're talking about finding joy in every moment. Before we get started with my amazing guest, Emily Guarnotta, I just want to remind everyone that you can be a part of our Parenting Perspectives workshops. Once a month I do a Parenting Perspectives podcast episode where I talk to a parent who's knee-deep in kiddos. And then I also do a live workshop. So it's the fourth Thursday of every month. It's at 1 o'clock Mountain Time in the afternoon. And you can register because these are free. And so you can register on the website, www.littleheartsacademyusa.com, and you will see parent perspectives, and that's where you can register. And once you're registered, you are open to attend all of them from then on. If that time didn't work for you, you can get the replays only there at the parent perspectives thing on the website. So yay, we have a lot of fun. We talk, you've got other parents who are asking questions, and we have a topic, of course, for the month that matches what we're doing with the podcast. So of course, this month we'll be talking about finding joy. With that in mind, let's talk for a second with Emily Guarnotta. And Emily, you are amazing and you've got kids and you're a specialist. Let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you so much for having me, DJ. Yeah, so I'm a psychologist and I work predominantly with parents that are just struggling with that adjustment to parenthood. So I support parents that are dealing with the baby blues, postpartum anxiety, depression, and just overall the stress that comes with parenting babies and toddlers and young children. I'm also a mother myself. I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. So that also keeps me pretty busy. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you so much. So I think, and we were talking just even earlier about how it's so easy to get caught up with the difficulties of just life in general, let alone parenting. We've got jobs that can be stressful, and then marriage, even in the best of times, all marriages have their issues. And so working through those and bills and all of these things that go on, maybe health issues. And it can be very easy to get bogged down with the negativity of what is going on in our world. And I find that as parents become more depressed and negative, their kids pick up on that too. Mm-hmm. And that has certainly been my experience in teaching school. First off, let's talk about how we can find joy as a parent and then how we can transfer that to our children. So let's talk for a second about what are some strategies then that we can use as moms and dads, because dads deal with it too, to find that joy in their lives and in every day.
Mm-hmm. I think one really important thing is to recognize that a lot of us live in survival mode, especially when our kids are young. It's very easy to fall into that being your new normal. And sometimes it's hard to recognize that you're not actually thriving, you're just surviving. So if you can take a step back and acknowledge that is what's happening and that you're not functioning at your best or you haven't felt joy in a long time, I think they always say like you have to have that awareness to change. So I think that being aware that you've fallen into that pattern is super important.
I agree. And because it's something that you can kind of do, and it can be kind of a slow process where you don't even see that it's happening. So one of the things I joke about with when I'm coaching parents, and yelling at your kids comes up a lot. And how can I stop yelling at my kids? And how funny it is that sometimes, and I did this too, when your kids are just doing their thing and you're stressed out and you recognize, wait, when did I start yelling? I can tell my voice is elevated. I've got this stress in my throat, but I don't remember when I started yelling, right? And so you have to stop and say, okay, wait, I've got to stop. I'm yelling and I don't want to yell. And so you pause, you let your kids even see that you recognize, when did I start yelling? You're using that verbally. And then you're saying, Mama needs to back off for a second, take a breath, maybe get a drink of water. And then we're going to talk about this in a calm and loving way. I think the same thing can happen with us when we're finding ourselves being super negative as well, or struggling, or man, how long has it been since I've really felt joy? And asking yourselves those questions. And so when you recognize it, that's when you can stop, take a breath, and look at your world around you and find the good things that are there. And it might be, well, thank heavens my kids are healthy enough to argue.
Yeah, reframing it, taking a step back and being grateful for the little things. Sometimes I'm grateful that I have this fresh drinking water to drink right now. I mean, it sounds so silly, but you can always find something to appreciate in that moment. And then that kind of elevates you above the negativity. That's something I use often in my day-to-day and especially in my parenting.
Me too. And it's been fun. Just this last week, I've been watching 2 of my grandkids while my daughter's out of town. And it's so much fun as a grandparent. It's a different game. But when you're there we had them for 10 days and you're getting them off to school and you're doing all of that. And you'll see their little arguments here and there. He won't play with me, kind of things. And yet just finding the joy in the moment of being back with having the little kids and recognizing that even there, and they don't have very many difficult points or moments, they don't argue hardly at all. But even during those moments, just how cute that can be, or, okay, so what can we do instead, or using a timer or whatever. And 2, recognizing that when you try something as a parent and it works, I'm going to try this new strategy. And it works, take that time to, give yourself some kudos and find joy in, it worked today. May not work tomorrow, but it worked today. And just finding that joy in the moment. Or I've got that clean glass of water. Or, man, the clouds are gorgeous today. I have a thing about clouds. I love clouds, you can see. and I think they can be just so beautiful. And just such great artwork. And sometimes it's just taking a moment to look out the window and see the beauty of spring and summer starting and the smells and the sounds and yet finding the time to do that too. How would you suggest someone or encourage someone to find those moments?
Well, one of the things that I do is every morning when I wake up and every night before I go to bed, I try to list at least 3 things that I'm thankful for, whether they're things that happen that day or just more in general. And then throughout my day, if I start feeling myself being pulled down into some of that more negative energy, I'll also say, okay, let's do a list of 3 things right now. And I'm trying more to do it even when I feel good or when I feel neutral, just to keep those positive feelings going. But gratitude, I mean, the research on gratitude, you can't discount it. It's a really powerful practice and it's free. It's a thing we can all do in any moment. It doesn't take any equipment. We don't have to go anywhere. We could do it right where we're sitting. And it's really a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. And it changes everything. Like when you're in gratitude, you're better able to find joy. We're going to talk about gratitude later on this year, by the way. That's one of our themes. It's our theme for November, of course. What else is it going to be? But finding gratitude can change our outlook. It can change our relationships at work. It can change our relationships with our spouse. And in fact, I talk about a time in my life when, it was just hard. It was just hard. And we were going through a lot of stuff and I was feeling very negative and kind of alone. My husband's very quiet, not easy. He's good at a lot of things. Conversation is not one of them. And so not feeling like I had someone that I could talk to and work things out with. And long story short, I started keeping a joy journal. And writing down every day, just writing down one thing that happened that either showed God's hand in my life, a kindness from someone, whether it was the clouds were gorgeous today, and maybe something going on there, or something my sweetheart did that was kind or out of his way to get something done for me or the kids or whatever. And it really turned my attitude around. And in fact, that to me was a pivotal point in my life where I consider myself to be a really happy person in general. And even when, things are going wrong, it's like, okay, what can we do? What am I going to learn from this? What are the things that I can do to change it up instead of being so beating down with, this is awful. This is terrible. Why can't this go right? Why can't he say this? And so I think keeping that joy journal really, I think it saved my marriage. I think it saved my whole attitude on life, changed my health. When you're joyful, you're healthier, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's amazing. I've heard of a gratitude journal. I've never heard it presented as a joy journal, but to keep track of those joyful experiences. I think you can also remind yourself that joy is something you can go out there and make happen. It might not necessarily happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
You can go into the coffee shop when you're buying your coffee and make it a joyful experience. Have a conversation with the barista, smile at the person in line next to you. Be that joy that walks into the room. I know I fall into this a lot too, where I expect the world to serve me joy on a silver platter. That's not always how it works. A lot of times we have to put in the work to make it happen. So I would encourage people to try to do that as well as like reflect on how they can bring joy into their lives and their experiences.
Yeah, and you brought up such a great point, and thank you for doing that. But realizing that you can be responsible for giving joy in the world, making someone else's day a little better. And isn't it funny how that just rebounds right back at you when you do something kind for someone and they're like, oh, wow, that was so helpful or whatever, and how you feel when you're able to do that for someone else. That increases your joy as well. So it just grows exponentially as you work at it. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And I've had I think she's been on my podcast twice. Her name's Natalie Silverstein, and she even does a podcast with teenagers, only teenagers, and it's about how they are doing service in the world and the things that teens get involved in that are positive and helpful. And that's just listening to that podcast brings me joy. I'll probably put a link in the show notes because it's great. And she has a thing that I got at the beginning of the year where you actually can plan out, what am I going to do to be of service to someone these days? And it's like a calendar. It's kind of like your typical book calendar that you would get, but you're planning out service. So whether you're involving it's something just yourself, or is this something I'm involving my kids with, my spouse, how are we doing that? And so then you're calendaring, bringing joy to someone there's so many ways to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think when you sit down and plan for it, it starts becoming part of who you are.
Yeah, because you're being more intentional.
Right. And I think you get to a point where you don't have to sit and plan it out so much anymore. It starts becoming second nature to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think anytime you're trying to adopt a new habit or make a change, it helps to be very intentional about it in the beginning. And then like you said, it becomes more second nature and you don't have to use as much brain power to make it happen. It just kind of becomes.
Exactly. Yeah. It just becomes part of who you are. And so I did this weirdo thing and people look at me like I have 3 heads sometimes when I tell them about it. But this was years ago. Well, probably about 7-8 years ago. I didn't have a big potty mouth, but I had like my 3 basic words. And I started noticing that when I would be upset or angry, that's when we use these words, right? And so I just felt inspired to quit using curse words at all in my life. That was hard to do. And it took me like 2 years to really get through it and eliminate that from my life. But for me, and I know it's not the same for everyone, so I'm not saying everyone needs to do what I did, but I'm just saying that for me, it really helped me become a calmer person and a happier person It just changed my outlook on how I managed angry moments or frustrating moments or whatever. But I think that if you stopped and looked at maybe some things that you could change, and whether it's your language or whether it's not running or not taking care of yourself, whether it's whatever, so identify something in your life that you want to either eliminate or add on and make that change and recognize that it's not going to happen overnight. Like for me, that was a 2-year endeavor to really work it out. And now I'm known for not using that language. And now I use words like jeepers. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I have found it diffuse the situation because instead of using that kind of language which ramps things up, and I say something like, oh, jumping Jehoshaphat, what are we going to do with this? And they're like, what did you just say?
It brings some humor.
Yeah, it does. And it settles things down. It helps. So anyway, that's just one of my stories. But finding something, though, that you can work on that you're going to improve, something with your attitude, your mental acuity on that, and being actively involved in working on it. I think that helps too. What are your experiences in helping people?
Yeah, it's funny as you're telling that story, I was thinking of myself. I've never been a big swear word person, but I do struggle a lot with negativity, which might surprise people who hear that I'm a psychologist and they might think that I'm positive all the time. But I really have to make an intentional, active effort to notice when I'm having negative thoughts. And I mean, it can be as silly as I'm driving down the street and I'm thinking, why is that person wearing that ridiculous hat? And why that person hasn't mowed their lawn? And it just wants to come at me. And one of the ways that I have tried to work on joy is trying to say, just catch myself when I am having those negative thoughts and kind of say, like, what are you doing here? Like, you have no business judging that person's hat or that person's lawn, and redirecting myself. Again, the gratitude is really helpful in those moments, but just being aware when I am speaking a negative language and catching it and then changing that language. Very similar to what you did with the swear words.
As we're talking about all these strategies that we can do to help ourselves look into the world in a different way with a more positive view, more positive eyes, and just taking a minute to, notice the trees or the clouds and whatever. How can we teach our children then to have that more positive outlook in their lives as well?
That's a great question. I think one of the things that's important is to try to be open to what does bring our kids joy, because our kids are different than us. And sometimes we're all a little bit biased in that we expect that our children are direct reflections of us or mirrors, and that what we find joy in, they're also going to find joy in. And that's not always the case. And I know I was sharing a story with you before we were recording about my 6-year-old and how I realized she was giving away all my things to her friends and to our neighbors. And it took a little while for me to realize that she found so much joy in giving gifts to other people. And I was getting frustrated at one point because she was giving away like things that were really important to me. And then I'd have to go to the neighbor's house and track them down. But once I realized that that was a joyful experience for her, we were able to find other ways for her to lean into that. So I think that that's, it's kind of a funny story, but I think that that's something to be aware of. Just like our kids can have different things that bring them joy, and we should try to look for what those things are because they're not always so obvious.
For sure. And like you said, they might not be the same things that are important to us. And so it's just paying attention and really being aware. I have 5 brothers. And this is the home I grew up in. So my mom, her birthday is August 15th. And my dad was a professor at UCLA. And every birthday, she got season tickets to UCLA basketball or football. And then their anniversary is September 15th. And so every year for her anniversary, she got season tickets to UCLA basketball. And a lot of us would think, geez, Doug, that's my dad. But if my dad ever diverted from that, it would have been a problem. My mom loved sports and she loved that and going to the games and the whole thing that was involved with that. And that's one of the things I think that helped my parents stay together is they both had that love for sports. They had a lot of other issues, but love for sports was there. And so with the five brothers, it was sports. That was it. The boys played football and basketball and I ran track, but we were lucky that we had everyone that was just kind of where we were. We were all doing sports. But then I have some nieces and nephews, though, because we all grew up and had kids and sports wasn't it for all of them. And so sometimes it was music. I have a couple of nieces that are totally into music and another one that's an amazing artist. And so it's being open to, oh, this is where you are. This is where you're going. And is this a positive thing in your life? Is this something that's going to be a good thing for you? And then do what you can to encourage them and be there for them and let them see the joy that you have in who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And
and try to be a part of it. If it's not something that really brings you personally a lot of joy, try to find ways to still support them in it, even if it's not your most favorite thing, or even if you don't want to spend your weekend at the basketball game or whatever it may be. You can find a lot of joy in seeing them find joy, and maybe that's kind of what you focus.
Yeah. My youngest brother, there's 17 years between us, and at 18 months, on a Wednesday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning while all the rest of us are getting ready for school and stuff, he would be in front of the TV screaming at it because there was no football games back then on Wednesday morning at 6 o'clock. He loved football. And guess what he does now? He's a football coach. So he has two sons and a daughter, and his daughter wanted to do dance. And so he's driving her off to dance. And he doesn't care about dance. He hates dance. And he had one of his sons with him one time. And his son said, "Dad, why are we sitting out here watching Sunny dance?" Her name's Sunny. And he said, "Because we love her and because it brings her joy." And yeah. And so the funny thing, though, was she went on her senior year. She was the homecoming queen at her high school, and she also kicked the game-winning field goal on the varsity football team.
Really? She played football too?
She took it. Yeah. She plays a college soccer now. She's on a soccer scholarship, but and so I think by being open to what they are and allowing them to try new things, they will oftentimes open themselves to things that you're interested in as well. And finding joy in doing things together. But it doesn't always work that way, and that's okay. And I was talking to you earlier about this too, that I had kindergarten kids, and sometimes even earlier when I was directing the preschools, who were just so negative and down and, well, that's not going to work, and nobody likes me, and I can't do this, and just at such a young age, so negative about things, and having to help them find what was good. In fact, one little guy, when I told him, "I know you're a good boy," he lost it. "I am not a good boy. I am a bad boy." And that was his identity. I was challenging his identity by trying to say, "You're good." No, I am not. But so we had to go around, and we found that this kid was brutally honest. "Did you just hit him?" "Yep." "Did you just say this?" "Yep." In our kindergarten, we had our own bathroom, in the classroom, and someone would come in and say, "Someone didn't flush," and he'd look at me and goes, "I think that was me." I mean, so honest. And so that's where we started developing his identity and he took great pride then in being honest. And so I think helping our kids find what is great and joyful, and, nothing builds me up more than the sound of a child's laughter. Does that work for you too?
Yeah. No. And when it's genuine, when they're genuinely feeling good or feeling joy or laughing. Yeah, that is a very special sound.
Yeah. I have a friend that he has a super, super stressful job. And, and then he's got his own 4 kids and trying to make everything all work. And I don't know if he found a website or something, but he found a way that when he gets super stressed, he can turn this on and it's just the sound of little kids laughing.
Really? Wow.
That's it. And so, yeah, instead of a podcast or music or anything for him, it's just these giggle sounds of little kids. And he says that'll bring me out. I can listen to that for, just a few minutes. Or sometimes he said he will just go out and sit in his car on the parking lot for 5 minutes. That's his little break, and just listen to kids laughing. And then he's able to go back in, and that helps him figure it out. And so I think when we as parents can engage in that and find joy in that, and then let them know that I love your laugh, I love your giggle, I love them, when they, again, it goes back to, I think, when they see they're bringing joy to someone else.
Yeah. And that's funny that for your friend, the sound of laughter, maybe he's a
Yeah.
very auditory person, but having those little tricks that you can pull out that work for you to
Yeah.
switch on your joy or switch your mood or your attitude. For a long time, I kept a list on my phone of experiences that I'd had that brought me a lot of joy and were really funny. And if I was having a rough day, I'd look at them and I was instantly brought back to that moment. And and I just
Yeah.
felt it. Like I would laugh out loud, and that helped tremendously. It's probably something I should get back into. But everyone, for me, I'm like a very visual person, so I would picture the memory in my head. But if you're more auditory, maybe having like a recording or something can be really helpful. But finding something that works for you personally.
Mm-hmm. Well, and too, maybe it's a sensory thing too,
Yeah.
for some people. So I know with my little, so I have this white coat, and it looks like it's a fake fur coat, but it's that super, super soft. It feels totally like fur. And in the winter, after I got it, I'd wear it to school, and I'd hang it up. And I had it sitting on my chair. I was in a rush that morning and I didn't get it hung up. It was just sitting on my teacher's chair. And I had a few kids that were very sensory sensitive and had some other learning differences and that kind of stuff. And one little guy was just very angry, and he's stomping around the room, and he saw my coat, and I think his intention was he was going to like throw it or something because he was mad. But when he picked it up, it was so soft, and he was like, "Oh." And he started rubbing the coat and just calmed right down. So we kept that out. And then from then on, and other kids would become, "I'm so upset or sad, and can I rub your coat?" Yeah, go
Oh,
rub the coat. And so sometimes it may be something that's auditory. Sometimes it may be something that is the sense of touch. We all have
yeah.
different senses. And so I think recognizing in our kids what are the things that are going to help them calm down and to be able to feel then that joy and that gratitude and push away those harder feelings. So my kids, they loved when I would give them hand rubs. And so sometimes just those kinds of touches, and that's skin on skin contact too. We talk about skin on skin with brand new babies, but they can be teenagers, and it's not the same kind of contact you'd have with a newborn baby. But rubbing their hands or scratching their back or
Yeah.
something, there's still that physical contact. And then just pointing out to them too, I think, "Do you hear that?" Or I remember when we were living in Vegas, and that just the skies in Vegas can be very beautiful. And there was an amazing sunset, and we were laying in the yard in the grass, and we would just close our eyes and then count to 10 and open them and just see how the clouds had changed
Oh,
in position. And they had a blast at that, and they loved that. And so we would talk about just things in nature or in friends or in family that can bring them joy and help them see that.
that's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think the senses are a really helpful way to help kids regulate and self-soothe. And then
Mm-hmm.
that opens to feeling more joy is when they're actually regulated.
Yeah. So I love some of the things that we've been able to talk about. I mean, just with us as adults finding joy and taking a moment maybe to do a joy journal, or at least mentally saying, oh, this is a joyful moment. I remember for me with my little ones, brand new babies, and I had other kids, but that 2 o'clock in the morning feeding, yes, I was tired, but that was my time with just me and the baby. And so finding what is it that you can have in your day, and then talking about our little kids and helping them see joy and experiencing joy with them is a great way to promote that. So I think we've hit some really good topics
Yeah.
today.
We really
Yeah.
need to model it for our kids too. We have to model that we're self-regulated, that we're dealing with our
Mhm.
emotions, and that we're finding moments of joy, and they're gonna
Yeah.
benefit from witnessing us practice that.
Yeah. Well, and I even remember being a kid growing up myself. So, you have friends who have parents, and some parents you really engage with, and others are like, come over to my house. I don't want to go to your house and play. But I know that the parents that I really enjoyed being at my friends' houses were the parents that would laugh with us, or there was this one mom I can remember, and her daughter was Lori, and Lori and I were good friends, and I loved going to her house because her mom would laugh at everything, and
Oh,
I loved that, and so I was naturally drawn to her. And I think that when our kids are growing up, that's something that I think by nature they're drawn to someone who is generally happy.
yeah, and who takes an interest in them?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and finds them engaging, and laughs at our silly jokes and or the stupid plays that we would put. They had to be so boring and ridiculous. But
They
we
found
could
joy in
always,
seeing you find it joyful. Yeah, even if it was a little bit
yes.
tedious to sit through.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So anyway, all of those things are kind of fun. So, Emily, though, talk to us a little bit about what you've got going on and how our parents can connect with you.
Yeah, so I own a practice called Phoenix Health, and it's an online therapy practice where we specialize in all maternal mental health conditions, from parents who are trying to conceive or dealing with infertility,
Mm-hmm.
parents who have dealt with pregnancy loss, all the way to people struggling during pregnancy or postpartum. And you can find us at www.joinphoenixhealth.com.
That's fantastic. And of course, I'm going to have that link in the show notes. So if you're interested, just drop down and click there and you've got it. So, Emily, thank you so much. And before we go, I always ask my guests the same question. And that is, while we know that there are no perfect parents, some parents do seem more successful than others. How would you describe a successful parent?
I would say a successful parent is one who really sees their children, who sees their children, who is able to kind of put their own biases, their own experiences, their own
Mm-hmm.
projections to the side, and is able to see their children as who they are and is able to support them in becoming who they are. I think that would be my
Love it.
definition of a successful parent.
Yeah, I agree. Allowing them to play the piano, or like me, running. I enjoyed running or whatever. And even if it's not something that you enjoyed, I'm sure my parents hated those track meets. So boring. And yet my mom was there and my siblings were there, and I wasn't a basketball. I was so short. I was almost the shortest kid in the class. I was not going to be a basketball player. And I was a girl. I wasn't going to be a football player. But still, that support and being there just really means so much.
Mhm.
I love that. Thank you so much. Well, Emily, I know we're planning on having you coming back again on the show and talking some more. And so we're really excited for that. But for this month, we'll continue on that theme of finding joy in every day and helping our kiddos find that. And so until next week, let's find joy in parenting. See you guys.